Mothers of married sons who don't like their daughter-in-laws. What's your reason? Mine was a cheating addict who strung my son along through a whole pregnancy full of lies. The baby came out a few too many shades off to pass as my son's. She even tried to take my son to court for child support. Until her lawyer laid eyes on my son and told her to forget it. She stole and pawned a lot of my son's belongings along the way too. She never got clean. Never got help. And has done this whole thing to yet another man since. Awful. I hope your son is doing better. Wow, not one response from a real mill. I am one. But I like my daughter-in-law just fine. I don't interfere. Just dote a bit on the grandkids when I visit. She and my son are a good match. I feel sorry for the kids dealing with grief coming from their own moms. Me too. I have 2 daughters-in-law. And I love them both. They are both smart, kind, accomplished, and good to my sons. My daughter was once in a serious relationship with a colossal asshole. But that's another story. The mother-in-law hate here is scary. I'm a mother of 3 sons. One of them is married and until very recently. I absolutely adored my daughter-in-law. She was the daughter I didn't have. They gave me the most amazing granddaughter. My daughter-in-law did. However, bring a level of drama to our lives that we were not accustomed to. And that was hard to adjust to. Being a household of primarily males, there just was not much drama. The daughter-in-law is 9 years older than my son. They started dating when my son was 19. I was very concerned about the age difference. But I always treated her respectfully and with kindness. They are amidst divorce now. And I'm not thrilled with her behavior over the past 6 months. My reason is that she knew she was dating a very young man. And they knew when they decided to marry and have a child that the young man was still quite young. My daughter-in-law remains flummoxed that my son, who is 23 now, hasn't turned into a 30-year-old adult like she is. Some red flags did go off for me as I observed her own relationship with her mother. They were quite harsh with each other. But I tried not to let that affect my acceptance of her and she became an integral part of our family. Nonetheless, she has treated my son poorly. And I no longer like her. It has nothing to do with competing with her. It has to do with how she is now treating him. And us. This potential mother-in-law is open to any potential daughter-in-law or same-sex partner any of my boys become involved with. I want my sons to have loving relationships in their lives. And I would never do anything to hinder whoever they choose to share their lives with. Not all mothers-in-law are horrible people. My mother-in-law sees me as competition. She doesn't like that she doesn't have control of her son anymore and that he's allowed to make his own decisions. I don't play her games or feed into her narcissism. And she hates everyone. Unless she can benefit from them. So there's that. That was my mother. She accused my wife of changing me. I wasn't as fun anymore. All that really changed was that I was growing up. You can't invite 30-year-old me over and expect 15-year-old me to show up. My grandmother hated my mother because my father was married once before and it doesn't count the second time. Basically, she preferred his ex to my mom. Because divorce. I'm not making assumptions based on her behavior or things my mother said. She actually said that to me in those exact words many times as she gave my half-siblings gifts but not me. Grandpa snuck me gifts behind her back. Though. Because he wasn't an awful person. She was clearly a horrible person. Not an average mother-in-law who just dislikes her dill. I'm assuming because he was supposed to marry a woman and give her grandbabies. But instead is marrying a man who doesn't even want to adopt for the foreseeable future. Kids are never guaranteed. Many straight couples struggle with infertility. If you make him happy, that should be enough. I'm curious if anyone will come here. As a mother who dislikes her daughter-in-law. And admitted for anything other than I knew she was trash. She cheated and broke his heart kind of dislike, you know. A situation where she was clearly validated in the end. My mother-in-law would dig a grave and bury herself in it before consciously admitting. Even to herself. She doesn't like me and makes sure I know it at every chance. There's just such a cognitive dissonance in the way she thinks of herself and the way she truly is. And I bet that's quite common. I know why my mom doesn't like my sister-in-law. She's unpleasant and mean. Every time we went to visit, she will make sure there's at least one fight with my brother. At least one yelling, drag out fight. So now every time we're trying to enjoy a visit, it's tense because we're waiting for the inevitable. Watching my nephew watch his parents scream at each other is the worst part. My brother went from doing okay, having friends and a sense of humor, and some shit, to now being overweight, unhappy, and having nothing to do on the weekends but drink and watch TV. Which she then picks a fight about. He's so wrapped up in it even when I try to get him alone for a while. It takes him a while to unwind. Otherwise, he puts me down so he doesn't feel awful. It sucks. I used to be best friends with my brother. And Ma knows it too. And hates her as much as she can. Mainly, it's pity because it's clear she's a miserable person. I was with a woman I thought would be my wife. We talked about it. Looked at rings etc. She was Catholic. I'm not. Her mom hated my guts because I wasn't Catholic. Her mom would send her emails monthly saying, "He isn't Catholic. He's not rich and never will be. Find yourself a rich Catholic boy so you don't have to work." etc etc. The mom got to the point where she spread rumors to my EXS friends about me. So now the mom and a bunch of her friends don't like me. So she left me in January. I've barely spoken to her. I got in touch with her the other day and told her how badly I want her back. Turns out, she's got herself a wealthy Catholic boyfriend now. 3 years being with her and being broken up for 4 months. I still dream about her every night and she moved on a few weeks after the split. Feels good, man. My mother hates my wife of 9 years and always has. My wife is half Hispanic. Had a son from a previous marriage. Had a father who was an ex-con and feels that my wife was taking me from her. I'm the only child who lived near them. She would go as far as to invite me and my wife's daughter to do things and not my wife and stepson. My father wasn't much better either. Needless to say that I had to cut ties with my parents. I'm also much happier since then. My mother-in-law never liked me much. She didn't hate me. But I am pretty sure she thought her son was better than me. Plus, to her, if you want blood, you want family. She had pictures all over her house of her other kids. Of my kids. Of my husband. But not one single picture of me. I spent 20 years trying to get her to like me. And then suddenly I just didn't care anymore. I was pleasant. Helped out when needed but just did not give a rat's ass. Made everything much easier. The thing I'm proudest of is that my kids have no idea. She's dead now and I have never said a bad word about her to them. They loved her. But at her funeral I was told to go in with the rest of the people. That this part was just for family. My grandma hated my uncle's wife. I think it was pure jealousy. Grandma was a bit of a controlling type and hated being replaced. She treated my uncle like a child. Sadly, he died of cancer while still pretty young. Grandma tried to rewrite the obituary and managed to piss off my uncle's wife and children for a very long time. My mom hated my brother's first wife. There were plenty of good reasons. She was an addict, a liar, and a cheater, among other things. My mother-in-law didn't hate me, but she didn't love me either. She resented me and wanted to be the only woman in my husband's life. It was obvious that she would have felt like that about anyone. I did not like my son's first girlfriend. She seemed very disinterested in everything but herself and her phone. I didn't really know her well or for long, but struggled to see what he liked about her beyond her looks. She was pretty. My mom hated my wife and I don't know why. My wife is beautiful, smart, kind and has never done anything to my mom. I mean frankly my wife is way too good for me. She's always been nice and a great mom to her grandkids. I guess my mom had this way of making these kind of backhanded comments. I never noticed it and kind of dismissed my wife about it for the first 5 years of our marriage. One day she admitted that she didn't like my wife and that was it. Haven't talked to my family in 2 years now. Best decision I've ever made. He should have chosen me. Fun story time. My coworker and I both have terrible mills. We always complain to each other because we got it, and it's hard to talk to your husband about it because they clearly love their parent and their parent treats them well. One day she turns to me and says, I know I am going to hate my future daughter-in-law because no matter who she is or what she does, she will never be good enough for my baby. My response, so basically you want to be your mother-in-law? Her eyes got really big and she was horrified that she would act the way our mother-in-law would without even knowing who he was possibly ever going to meet. He was in middle school at the time and years away from being that serious with anyone. I am pretty sure that is the mentality of my own mother-in-law. My mother-in-law hates me. She'll talk shit behind my back but try and be nice as pie to my face. How do I know this? Because it's my husband she talks to. According to Mill. Even though we all started out on council estates. Because they bought their own home. I'm not the right class. Because I have a degree. I'm taking the piss out of my husband's intelligence. Because I'm 7 years older than my husband. I've obviously brainwashed him into abandoning her. Because I don't make a ton of money. I'm a gold-digging who only wants him for his money, despite him being depressed, jobless and suicidal when I met him, and because I have tattoos. I've obviously got massive issues. My husband eventually got told that he should move back home with them, and as a sop, he could still be in a relationship with me. He told her that if she made him choose, she'd lose. She's been coldly civil to me ever since. I have a relative who hates their daughter-in-law because she wouldn't allow her husband to donate his bone marrow to save his brother who had leukemia. Her logic being, one of your sons is already screwed up. Why would you potentially want to screw up the second one? So one of my sons got me to make an account quickly to give an actual perspective from a mother-in-law. For me, I don't like my other son's new wife because she's a lazy itch, to put it bluntly. They are both 26 now and she doesn't lift a finger to help do any housework, laundry etc. She seems to expect him to do everything for her and it feels like he's a doormat to me in that respect, even though he probably doesn't see it that way. You can go into their house and there'll be piles of dirty dishes just lying around unwashed and it's disgusting. Relationships should mean shared responsibility, but she doesn't do her part. On top of that, it's like she treats our home like hers and just makes herself at home around our pool and hot tub. She uses them more than we do and we live here. The only good thing I have to say is she doesn't seem to be after him for money. We're a well-off family and he's making £100,000 plus at 26 and should be making £500,000 by 35-40 at this rate, and she builds up more savings than he does despite earning 4x more. Honestly, I just wish she would do more to help out. Even just offering would be nice, even if we don't need it, but as long as they're happy I keep out of it. My mother doesn't like my brother's wife because said mother happens to be a narcissistic asshole who wanted him to pick her as the number one in his life. My mother hates my fiancé simply because he is a recovering heroin addict. The fact that I am one too seems to make no difference. What's more, his family is so lovely to me and it makes me really sad that he can't have the same experiences with my family. My mom just told me under no uncertain terms that I am not allowed to marry my girlfriend of 2.5 years. Dude, you're an adult. You don't need your mother's consent. And if you want and you think your girlfriend is the one, you can tough it out until you are an adult. I wouldn't advise marrying quick. I'd wait until you know for sure that you guys are in love with each other. But I'm not anyone to tell you what to do. I love both my daughters-in-law now. But at one time, my oldest was very serious and talking marriage with a girl that no one I knew liked except my son. She was really arrogant with no particularly good reason for being so. She didn't appear to like anyone else either. She was just very bad-natured. I was upset for my son but also relieved when she broke it off. He'd hit a bad patch and was out of work, so she started seeing someone else. I can answer the other way. I'm a daughter whose mother doesn't really like my husband. His personality doesn't jive with hers. Which I could see at first because he can be a bit tightly wound. Where she's really laid back, but I guess she won't admit that her daughter is also tightly wound and we're a great match. In addition, he didn't go to college. His family isn't as solid as ours. And his upbringing was not as good. We also eloped, not in the pregnant teenager sense of the word. But we didn't have a wedding. Which she seems to blame him for, and that kind of seals the deal on her dislike of my husband and opinion of my marriage. She doesn't really ask about him, and when I mention him, her answers are curt and seem bothered. We don't currently live in my home state, which I am hoping to change very soon. As long as she doesn't make her unwarranted opinions known, and is able, on some level, to fake it, we'll be fine. That's not ideal, but it's likely how it'll be. Her mind is made up about him, and the things she said about him us before we married aren't things I will ever fully heal from. She has a way, however, of subtly saying things without saying things, and if that's been going on with my family, we will have to address it.